In the rain-soaked forests of Portland, Oregon, a single father's morning jog would change everything. What he found hanging from an ancient oak tree wasn't just a crime scene. It was the beginning of a story that would expose the darkest corners of corporate America. A story about Sarah Chen, a 28-year-old CEO who had built an empire from nothing, only to discover that success couldn't protect her from the hatred that had been festering in the shadows. Some said she deserved it. Others whispered she had it coming, but none of them knew the truth about what really happened that night or what would happen next. Marcus Williams had been running these same forest trails for 3 years, ever since his wife died and left him raising 8-year-old Emma alone. At 35, he was the kind of man people overlooked: average height, graying temples, wearing a faded Nike jacket that had seen better days. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at Portland Community College, a job that barely covered the mortgage on their small house in southeast Portland. Most mornings he dropped Emma at school, then came here to clear his head before another day of fixing broken pipes and flickering lights. But this Tuesday morning in October was different. The Oregon mist hung thick between the Douglas firs, and something felt wrong. Marcus slowed his pace as he approached the clearing near Burnside Bridge, the place where joggers usually stop to stretch. That's when he saw her. Sarah Chen was suspended from the massive oak tree, her arms bound above her head, feet barely touching the ground. She wore a torn designer suit, her shoulder-length black hair matted with blood. Around her neck hung a crude cardboard sign: "White man don't forgive. Learn your place." Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing. Barely. Marcus's first instinct was to call 911, but as he pulled out his phone, something made him pause. This wasn't random violence. The positioning was too deliberate, too symbolic. Someone had wanted her found this way. Someone had wanted to send a message. As sirens wailed in the distance, because Marcus had called anyway, he noticed something glinting in the mud near the tree. A small silver locket, expensive looking, with initials engraved on the back: SC Never Give Up, Dad. Inside was a photo of a young Asian girl with pigtails standing next to an older Chinese man in front of a small restaurant. Sarah Chen's eyes fluttered open just as the paramedics arrived. For one brief moment, she looked directly at Marcus. Her gaze wasn't pleading or grateful. It was calculating, cold, determined. Like someone who had just made a very important decision about what came next. The news reports would call her the startup sensation who fell from grace. At 28, she was the youngest female CEO to take a tech company public in Oregon's history. Chef Tech, her restaurant management software company, was valued at $500 million and employed over 800 people. The media loved her story. Immigrant daughter makes good, breaks glass ceiling, proves American dream still alive. But they didn't know about the restaurant. 20 years earlier, in a strip mall in Beaverton, Chen's Gardens served the best dim sum in Portland. Sarah's father, David Chen, had worked 16-hour days to build it from nothing after arriving from Hong Kong with $200 and a dream. He taught Sarah everything: how to balance books, manage staff, understand what customers really wanted. By age 8, she could calculate profit margins in her head. By 12, she was redesigning their inventory system. Business is not about being the smartest person in the room, he would say, using his pet name for her, Little Treasure. It's about solving problems nobody else wants to solve. The restaurant thrived until 2019, when the hate crime started. First, it was broken windows and racist graffiti, then threatening letters. Finally, a brick through their front door with a note: "Go back where you came from." The police said they were investigating, but weeks turned into months with no arrests. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in March. Sarah was at Stanford, finishing her MBA, when her father called. His voice was shaking. "They burned it down, Little Treasure. They burned everything." The insurance company found irregularities in their policy and denied the claim. The fire department ruled it suspicious, but inconclusive. David Chen lost everything: his life's work, his savings, his spirit. Sarah dropped out of Stanford the next day and came home to find her father staring at the charred remains of their dreams. That night, she made 2 promises. She would rebuild what they had taken from them, and she would never let anyone destroy her family again. Chef Tech wasn't just a business idea. It was a weapon. Sarah designed software that helped small restaurants compete with chains, manage costs, survive economic downturns. She gave presentations wearing her father's lucky tie, the one he'd worn to their grand opening 20 years earlier. The company grew explosively, fueled by her 18-hour workdays and an obsessive attention to detail that impressed investors and intimidated competitors. But success brought scrutiny, and scrutiny brought enemies. The corporate world of Portland was still an old boys club, especially in tech. Sarah's rapid rise disrupted established power structures, and her success made certain people uncomfortable. At industry conferences, she heard the whispers. She's too aggressive. She doesn't know her place. Someone should put her in check. The worst was Richard Blackwood, CEO of Northwest Ventures, Portland's largest investment firm. He'd been forced to watch a little Chinese girl, his words, outmaneuver deals he'd been working on for years. At a charity gala 6 months earlier, he'd cornered her at the bar. You know, sweetheart, he'd said, loud enough for others to hear, there's a right way and a wrong way to do business in this town. Maybe someone should teach you the difference. Sarah had smiled politely and walked away, but she remembered. She always remembered. Now, lying in her hospital bed with IV tubes in her arms and bandages on her wrists, Sarah stared at the ceiling and did what she always did when someone tried to break her. She planned. The attack should have generated sympathy. Instead, it triggered something uglier. CEO found hanging in forest, stage for sympathy, read the headline in Portland Business Journal. The article, written by senior reporter Jake Morrison, questioned whether Sarah had orchestrated her own assault to gain public support for her struggling company. Industry insiders suggest Chef Tech has been hemorrhaging clients for months, Morrison wrote. Could this attack be an elaborate publicity stunt? The piece went viral. Social media exploded with conspiracy theories and barely disguised racism. Fake victim began trending alongside Learn Your Place. Anonymous accounts posted her home address, her parents' information, photos of her father's burned restaurant with comments like, maybe they should have learned English first. But the real damage came from inside Portland's business community itself. The attack started subtle. At the Portland Tech Association meeting 2 weeks after the incident, Sarah arrived to find her reserved seat had been given away. "Oh, we thought you might not be coming," said Association President Linda Crawford, her voice dripping with false concern. "After everything you've been through, we understand if you need to step back for a while." Sarah sat in the back row and watched as the group discussed a new diversity initiative, one that conspicuously excluded Chef Tech from the list of participating companies. When she raised her hand to ask why, Crawford smiled coldly. "We felt it was important to work with organizations that have established credibility in the community." The humiliation deepened at the Northwest Innovation Summit. Sarah had been scheduled to give a keynote address about disrupting traditional business models. The day before the event, summit organizer Tom Bradley called with regrets. "We've decided to go in a different direction with the programming," he explained. "Nothing personal, but some of our sponsors are concerned about controversy." Her replacement was Richard Blackwood, who gave a presentation titled Sustainable Growth in Uncertain Times. From the audience, Sarah watched him click through slides about responsible leadership and earning trust through consistency. When he mentioned the importance of authentic crisis management, his eyes found her in the crowd. He smiled. The media pile-on intensified. Morrison published a follow-up piece. Chef Tech loses major clients amid leadership questions. He'd somehow obtained internal company documents showing 3 restaurant chains had canceled their contracts. The article quoted anonymous sources, calling Sarah unstable and a liability. At the Portland Chamber of Commerce monthly luncheon, Sarah found herself seated at table 12, in the back corner, next to the kitchen doors. She'd previously been at table 1 with the other major CEOs. When she approached Chamber President Patricia Hoffman about the seating change, Hoffman barely looked up from her notes. "I'm sure it was just an oversight," Hoffman said dismissively. "Though I have to ask, are you certain you're ready to be back in public forums? Some of our members have expressed concerns about your stability." The worst came during the quarterly Oregon Business Leaders Roundtable. Sarah had attended for 3 years, contributing insights that had shaped regional economic policy. This time, moderator David Walsh introduced her with a qualifier. Sarah Chen, CEO of Chef Tech, joining us despite recent personal challenges that have raised questions about her company's future. When Sarah tried to contribute to a discussion about supporting immigrant entrepreneurs, Walsh cut her off. "I think we should hear from leaders whose companies aren't currently under investigation," he said smoothly. There was no investigation, but the damage was done. Murmurs rippled through the room. Richard Blackwood leaned forward in his chair. "Perhaps," he said with practiced concern, "we should focus on sustainable business practices rather than experimental approaches that might not serve our community's long-term interests." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Some of us have been building trust in this market for decades. That kind of foundation can't be rushed or manufactured." The room fell silent. Sarah felt every eye on her, measuring her reaction. She kept her expression neutral. But inside, something cold and furious was crystallizing. After the meeting, as attendees networked over cocktails, Sarah found herself increasingly isolated. Conversations stopped when she approached groups. People who had once sought her advice now avoided eye contact. She overheard fragments of whispered conversations. Should have seen this coming. Too aggressive from the start. Maybe this will teach her. The final humiliation came from an unexpected source. Jenny Kim, a Korean-American CEO Sarah had mentored for 2 years, approached her by the bar. "Sarah," Jenny said quietly, "I wanted you to hear this from me first. The Asian Business Leaders Alliance has decided to suspend your membership pending resolution of recent events." Sarah stared at her. "Recent events? You mean being attacked and left for dead?" Jenny couldn't meet her eyes. "There are concerns about the attention you're bringing to our community. Some members feel it's better to maintain a low profile until things settle down." That night, Sarah sat in her downtown condo, looking out at the Portland skyline her company had helped shape. On her desk lay 3 resignation letters from key employees, 2 contract cancellations, and a formal notice that the Oregon Technology Council had revoked her Rising Star Award due to circumstances that no longer align with our organization's values. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Maybe now you understand. This is our city, our rules. Learn your place or face the consequences." Sarah deleted the message and opened her laptop. 3 months after the attack, Sarah Chen sat in her empty office at 2 a.m., staring at bankruptcy papers. Chef Tech had lost 60% of its clients. Half her staff had quit. Her board of directors had demanded her resignation twice. The latest financial projections showed the company had maybe 6 weeks of runway left. On her desk lay her father's lucky tie, the one she'd worn to every important presentation. It was wrinkled now, stained with coffee and tears she refused to admit she'd shed. Next to it sat the silver locket Marcus Williams had found in the forest. The one the police had returned after their investigation went nowhere. She opened the locket and stared at the photo of her 8-year-old self with her father. They were both smiling, standing in front of Chen's garden with a grand opening banner behind them. Her father's arm was around her shoulders, and even in the old photo, she could see the pride in his eyes. "Never give up," she whispered, reading the inscription. But the words felt hollow now. Her phone rang. It was her father, calling from the assisted living facility where he'd moved after losing the restaurant. His health had been declining since the fire. Doctors said it was stress-related heart problems, but Sarah knew it was a broken spirit. "Little treasure." His voice was weak but gentle. "I saw the news again today. Maybe it's time to come home. Maybe we both need to rest." Sarah closed her eyes. For a moment, she imagined it. Selling what was left of the company, taking care of her father, finding some quiet job where no one knew her story. It would be easier, safer. "The people who hurt us," her father continued, "they won. Maybe that's okay. Maybe fighting just brings more pain." After he hung up, Sarah sat in the darkness for an hour. She picked up the resignation letter she'd written but never sent. All it needed was her signature. One name, and this nightmare would be over. But as she reached for her pen, her fingers brushed against something else on her desk. A business card from Marcus Williams, the man who'd found her. He'd visited her in the hospital once, quietly, bringing Emma to see how Sarah was healing. The little girl had drawn her a picture. A stick figure standing on top of a mountain with the words, "Don't give up," written in purple crayon. Sarah looked at the drawing, then at her father's tie, then at the locket. She tore up the resignation letter. Some battles were worth losing everything for. Sarah Chen's counterattack began with a single email sent at dawn on a Tuesday morning. The subject line read, "Portland Tech Community, time for truth." She didn't send it to reporters or bloggers. Instead, she sent it to every startup founder, every young entrepreneur, every woman and minority business owner who had ever felt the sting of Portland's Old Boys Network. People who had been watching her destruction with the sick recognition of their own potential futures. The email contained 47 pages of meticulously documented evidence, screenshots of racist messages sent to her company's social media, audio recordings from business meetings where she'd been dismissed or belittled. Oregon is a one-party consent state, and Sarah had been recording everything for months. Financial records showing how certain contracts had been suddenly canceled after private conversations with Richard Blackwood's firm. Most damning of all, a security camera recording from a restaurant supply company showing 3 men in suits, including Jake Morrison from Portland Business Journal, meeting with known white supremacist groups 2 days before Sarah's attack. But the email wasn't just about exposing her enemies. It contained something else. A complete blueprint for Chef Tech's revolutionary new platform, released as open-source software, free for any small business to use. No licensing fees, no corporate oversight. Just the tools Sarah had developed to help restaurants survive and thrive, given away to the community that had abandoned her. I built Chef Tech to honor my father's dream of helping small businesses compete, she wrote. Today, I'm giving that dream back to the people who need it most. Use it well. Build something better than what they tried to tear down. Within hours, the tech community exploded. Young entrepreneurs who had been secretly documenting their own experiences with Portland's discriminatory business culture began sharing their stories. The hashtag Portland Truth began trending as dozens of women and minority founders revealed similar patterns of exclusion, manipulation, and sabotage. But Sarah's real masterstroke was what happened next. While Portland's establishment scrambled to contain the scandal, Sarah quietly activated a network she'd been building for months. Every client who had canceled their Chef Tech contract, every board member who had demanded her resignation, every organization that had excluded her from their events, she knew their secrets. She'd been in their boardrooms, seen their financial statements, heard their private conversations, and now she started talking. The first domino fell when Sarah released internal documents showing that Northwest Ventures, Richard Blackwood's firm, had been artificially inflating property values in Portland's historically black neighborhoods to force out longtime residents. The scheme had generated millions in profits while destroying established communities. The second domino was Jake Morrison's journalistic ethics. Sarah revealed that Morrison had been secretly paid by several tech companies to write negative coverage of their competitors. His investigative journalism about Chef Tech had been purchased for $15,000. The third domino brought down the Portland Chamber of Commerce president Patricia Hoffman when Sarah exposed how Hoffman had been using chamber funds to pay for personal vacations while claiming they were business development trips. But Sarah saved the best for last. At 5 p.m. on Friday, she held a press conference in the exact spot where she'd been found hanging 3 months earlier. She wore her father's lucky tie and carried the silver locket. Behind her stood Marcus Williams and his daughter Emma, along with 40 other supporters, small business owners, Chef Tech employees, and community leaders who had finally found the courage to speak. Sarah didn't talk about revenge or justice. She talked about her father's restaurant, about immigrants who came to America believing in opportunity, about the small businesses that made Portland's economy possible. She talked about 8-year-old Emma Williams, who had asked why people were so mean to the nice lady who made software to help her uncle's food truck. 3 months ago, someone tried to silence me, Sarah said, her voice steady and clear. They thought hanging me from a tree would break me. They thought destroying my company would erase my voice. They were wrong. She held up a folder. Today, I'm announcing the Portland Small Business Initiative. We're using the technology Chef Tech developed, now free and open source, to help 500 local businesses improve their operations over the next year. We're providing microloans, mentorship, and technical support to any entrepreneur who needs it, regardless of their background or connections. The crowd of reporters stirred. This wasn't the story they'd expected. The funding for this initiative comes from a settlement I reached this morning with several Portland organizations and individuals, Sarah continued. Rather than pursuing lengthy legal battles, we agreed on a different kind of justice, investment in the community they tried to exclude me from. Richard Blackwood, watching from his downtown office, turned off the live stream and reached for his phone. But it was too late. Sarah's evidence package had already been delivered to the FBI, the Oregon Attorney General, and the IRS. His firm would be under investigation by Monday. As Sarah finished her presentation, something remarkable happened. The small crowd of supporters had grown into hundreds of people. Food truck owners, restaurant workers, tech startup founders, college students, a cross-section of Portland's real community, not its self-appointed elite. They weren't cheering or chanting. They were just standing there, quietly, witnessing a moment when someone had chosen to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than wound. Sarah Chen had won. Not through revenge or retribution, but by proving that dignity and purpose were more powerful than hate. The crowd began to disperse as the sun set behind Portland's skyline, but one person remained. Marcus Williams approached Sarah as she packed her notes. Emma ran ahead, collecting fallen leaves and adding them to a small bouquet she'd been building throughout the presentation. 6 months later, Marcus Williams was jogging his usual morning route when he saw her again. Sarah Chen sat on the same fallen log where they'd first met, but now she wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of designer suits. Her hair was longer, softer. She looked peaceful. Morning runs are better for reflection than evening ones, she said as he approached. Fewer ghosts in the daylight. Marcus sat beside her. How's your father? Better, she replied. He's helping with the restaurant program now, teaching young entrepreneurs how to calculate food costs and manage inventory. Turns out being forced to start over gave him perspective on what really matters. Through the trees, they could see Portland's skyline. Several new businesses displayed small Portland Small Business Initiative stickers in their windows, a network of support that had grown far beyond what Sarah originally envisioned. The people who tried to destroy you, Marcus said carefully, some of them lost everything. Sarah nodded. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's necessary. She stood, brushing leaves from her jeans. The difference is, I didn't try to break them. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. As she walked away, Sarah paused. Tell Emma thank you for the drawing. I keep it on my wall at the new office. Marcus watched her disappear into the morning mist, then continued his run. On his way home, he passed a small restaurant with a help wanted sign in the window. Below it, a handwritten note. All backgrounds welcome. Character matters more than connections. Later that day, Emma Williams sat at her kitchen table working on a school project about heroes. She drew a picture of a woman in a business suit standing in front of a tree, but instead of hanging from it, the woman was planting something new in the soil below. At the bottom of the page, she wrote in careful third-grade handwriting, "Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who choose to help instead of hurt." Marcus looked over his daughter's shoulder and smiled. "Where did you learn that, sweetheart?" Emma pointed to a small frame drawing on their refrigerator, the one she'd given to Sarah months earlier. The stick figure was still standing on top of the mountain. But now Emma had added something new. Below the mountain, dozens of tiny stick figures were climbing up, following the path the first figure had made. "She taught me," Emma said simply. "Heroes don't win by being mean back. They win by showing other people how to be brave." Marcus hugged his daughter and realized she was right. Some battles are won not with power, but with dignity. Sarah Chen had learned that lesson hanging from an oak tree in Portland's forest. Now she was teaching it to anyone brave enough to listen. Her father's restaurant had been rebuilt. Not with bricks and mortar, but with community and hope. The Portland Small Business Initiative had helped over 800 entrepreneurs in its first year, creating a network of mutual support that stretched far beyond what any single company could achieve. Sarah's name still appeared in business journals, but now the articles focused on her work developing ethical business practices and supporting underrepresented founders. She never returned to the corporate world that had tried to destroy her. Instead, she built something better. Richard Blackwood's firm had closed under federal investigation. Jake Morrison lost his journalism career and faced charges for accepting bribes. Patricia Hoffman resigned in disgrace and was barred from holding leadership positions in professional organizations. But Sarah took no satisfaction in their downfall. She was too busy planting seeds for futures they couldn't imagine. In today's world, when you see injustice, do you walk away, or do you choose to build something better? If you were her, would you forgive?